Hey, welcome back everyone to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It'll probably be 4 parts today, try to make up for these Wednesday and just, Friday and Monday. I'm going to just continue here and maybe follow up with these stories that I left off with. It's kind of crazy what they said here. It says here that's all it will take. Just say you're sorry as far as this U.S.-Afghan breakthrough deal about troops staying beyond 2014. And it says that U.S. and Washington said on Tuesday there was no need to apologize to Afghanistan for mistakes and civilians suffering due to U.S. drone strikes and operations in Afghanistan, saying, this is Suzanne Rice told CNN, there is no need for the U.S. to apologize to Afghanistan, quite the contrary. No such letter has been drafted. That is not on the table. Then U.S. troops remain in Afghanistan perhaps indefinitely. Many thought that they were being led to believe that the war in Afghanistan will soon be over. But it goes on, it says that they may maintain military outposts in Afghanistan for many years to come and pay to support hundreds of thousands of Afghan security forces. A document that was obtained by NBC about the U.S.-Afghan security deal appears to be the start of a new open-ended military commitment in Afghanistan in the name of training continuing to fight al-Qaeda while they're supporting them in other countries. So I remember before where the U.S. was actually holding talks with Pakistan, peace talks or something like that, and and the president or whoever it is, prime minister of Pakistan was like, yeah, just halt on the drone strikes, please, while we're doing our talks. And the U.S. that day bombed them with a drone. It says here, U.S. drone attacks Pakistani religious school, killing 8. The U.S. had just promised today to hold off on future drone strikes, November 20th. The U.S. breaks its promises so quick with Pakistan it's scarcely worth mentioning them in the first place. Just hours after a promise not to launch any more drone strikes against the country for the duration of the talks, the U.S. drones pounded a religious school in Hangu, killed 8 people, including 3 teachers and 5 students. Something that's noteworthy is that it was not in the federally administered tribal areas where they usually do their drone strikes, but in this KP province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Hitting the proper province is much more controversial within Pakistan, and a major backlash is expected on a national level. So, that's why I said with Iran in the last video, why would you even want to try to make any deals with the West, just with what they did with Afghanistan, what they do with Pakistan. U.S. assassination drone strikes hit eastern Yemen. And I didn't know this, but it says the incident comes after 3 people were killed in another U.S. drone strike in the same province on Tuesday. So the U.S. and the West are about fighting al-Qaeda, right? But you've probably seen this. I've covered it. In October, the British-based legal action charity Reprieve said the U.S. drone strikes in Yemen were illegal under international law. And that's not the important part. This is, and we're driving people into the arms of al-Qaeda. I think that's what their government even said. It's driving people in the hands of al-Qaeda. But like I said before, there's legitimate people that are in tribal areas, whether it's in Pakistan or Afghanistan, and they're resisting outside interference, imperialism into their country. That's the way they see it. A loss of local sovereignty, and so these people are legitimate. But the West will call them al-Qaeda terrorists. While at the same time, they will fund jihadist radicals. Usually they're not even really Muslims. They're just kind of mercenaries that stay at really nice hotels before they go and strap bombs to their chest and smoking cigarettes and having, all kinds of stuff that goes against their religion. But speaking of Yemen, thought I'd throw this in there with Somalia. This is from the Jakarta Post, the 21st century regional maritime Silk Road. After its inception on April 13, 1949, defense cooperation between Indonesia and China survived ups and downs, whatever, until the 2 countries were frozen in '67. But the main thing is we're talking about trade routes. So, and there's Yemen, southern Yemen, there's Somalia, and that's part of them too. I mean, it would actually be to the interests of Zionist occupied Europe and North America to have these areas destabilized, like Egypt right now or Libya. That's why I said you could see Saudi Arabia go, Iran. These will all just be free routes, right? So instead of these local sovereign peoples, protecting their resources, administrating it locally, and defending their territories and their routes, their trade routes, or their waters, now you're going to have these international companies, basically usually bombing people, destabilizing, whether it's Africa or the Mid East and that, and taking their resources very cheaply, and then shipping it through all these different areas of where they're not going to meet much resistance or have to pay a tax. Instead, they can float through there, and they can say that they've been hit by pirates after they just pirated someone's resources of themselves. This, of course, justifies building some kind of naval force to fight pirating, and other countries are kind of on board with this too, China and Iran. This will allow them to have a militarized shipping operation while they're pirating and stealing resources. I saw an article about genocide. France is saying genocide is taking place in Central Africa. Well, there's genocide taking place in varying degrees all over the world, so I guess it depends on what type of genocide, but it's been happening for a while. So, and it says here that the Minister of Defense said that that they might have reinforcements of about 350 to 1,000 men in parts of Africa. This would be added to the 400 French soldiers currently there. It says here that the ICC, International Criminal Court cases, could destabilize East Africa. This is what Kenya said. They warned that these cases against this President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto could destabilize the entire East African region. On November 20th, Kenyan Foreign Minister said Africa feels marginalized like toddlers whom the international community feels has never learned to walk. And speaking of keeping a place, a failed state, destabilizing it, in Iraq, 79 dead, 106 wounded. Like I mentioned before, I'm not even sure how they have this many people here to be blown up and wounded. Eventually, there's just going to be a bunch of people with blown up, with missing limbs and stuff. But maybe they could just create some kind of destabilization in North America or in Europe, and then they can create refugees, from there, and then they can go to Iraq, or they can get blown up there. Libya, we've covered this recently about people trying to get control over the resources, and they had pretty big clashes and stuff like that. I think one of the Libyan political figures was actually kidnapped or abducted. Libya militias withdraw from Tripoli. So militias in Libya, including two groups from the country's west, have withdrawn from Tripoli days after fatal clashes with people protesting against the presence of these militias in the capital. I don't know if it's a spelling or it's actually a different word, but Al-Qaeda Brigade said it handed over to the Libyan authorities a site the group had occupied and was returning to its post on the, quote, southern frontier. The group was equipped with weapons, vehicles including tanks. The heavily armed Sawak Brigade also said it was pulling out from the premises of an organization founded by former Libyan ruler Muammar Gaddafi. So this is interesting. These are the same militias that overthrew Gaddafi and his forces, which weren't really all that strong to begin with, but they were basically carrying out this NATO and Western plan to destabilize Libya. On November 19th, Tripoli announced plans to remove militias from the capital and integrate them into the country's security forces. So these guys would be regular government soldiers. I guess you could say they went to be terrorists, then they turned into militias, then they turned into soldiers. One person said Libyans never saw this coming years after the overthrow of Gaddafi, and they're still in turmoil. Hope they realize now that Gaddafi was never their problem, it was the West. Another possible terrorist attack here in China. China's oil pipeline explodes and kills 35 people on Friday. The pipeline run by Sinopec, spraying a lake early on Friday, exploded several hours later after workers sought to repair it. It's kind of like what I've seen in, I think it was either Iran, where they, with the assassinations or whatever, it's, oh no, it's not that, So it's almost like they don't want to admit if it is a terrorist attack by the West, usually. China challenging U.S. military power. A U.S. congressional panel, which basically advises lawmakers on national security implications of the relationship between Washington and Beijing, has warned that China could possess the largest fleet of modern submarine and combat ships in the Western Pacific by 2020. And yeah, Washington, Beijing, I just think that they're, for lack of a better word, Illuminati hubs, like Moscow or London, so it's not really the American people or the Chinese people or the Russian people. So I think it's a big business too. It's to pump up money. Ooh, China's getting bigger, and of course is, oh, come on, U.S. take on more debt or whatever, or buy some more expensive crappy jets. I think it was the recent jets. They're just pieces of crap. And you have Boeing and them selling, Boeing or Lockheed Martin selling jets to China, and you have equipment that the U.S. has, military equipment, that has backdoors created in it when it was made in China. So, yeah, this is the way it goes. So they say dealing with China's growing military power is expected to be a priority of the Obama regime in the coming years. And I have a few articles here left for you. For this video, U.S. is worried about China's nuke bombers hitting military bases. Remember I mentioned this before about Colombia reporting that Russian nuclear-capable jets flew illegally over their airspace. Also, you had Chinese reconnaissance ships, pretty big one, posted off near Hawaii and Guam. The U.S. is gravely concerned about China's new long-range nuclear bombers that could target previously unreachable U.S. military bases in the Pacific. So, unlike some other wars, well, I think most of them are about money and about power and stuff, this is not going to be about, it's not going to really be about ideology at all. It'll just be, if we, the two trading blocks go to war, it's exactly what it'll be. Two trading blocks going to war. NATO versus SCO or something. But, basically, this is their way of competing against each other financially, just blow some of the civilians up. It's, like I said, it's not the Chinese people. These are corporations that will be going to war with each other. And whoever wins it will have the biggest market share. The CEOs, the presidents, and the soldiers, the foot soldiers are actually the American and Chinese worker who are going to work to circulate this debt so that they can create more debt and so that they can make more money on interest. 40,000 NATO troops are to stage massive European war games from the 20th after the 2014 pullout from Afghanistan, which we just covered. It didn't really happen, not gonna happen. NATO is set to stage huge European war games involving 40,000 troops, about 7 times the size of recent drills in the Baltic. So, it says critics are in the crisis-hit EU are calling it a waste of money. Well, it's not a waste of money, right? That's the name of the game. It's basically one of the trading blocks saying, "Hey, if you really want to do this, we're ready to throw down with you if we have to." The major reason given by NATO is that the troops need to stay sharp and practice their interoperability, especially after Afghanistan in times of military inactivity. They're set to begin in 2015, involving 40,000 troops deployed in Spain and Portugal. NATO Land Forces commander told Reuters that this kind of exercise, this sort of complexity, is going to be the norm. So the exercises are just the first in a series. Germany's Bundeswehr established drills against invasions and popular uprisings. Completely unnoticed by the public, they've rehearsed large maneuvers of invasions of foreign states and the use of popular uprisings against the Special Forces crowd riot control. You guys probably remember this one. Swiss army trains for French invasion. A bankrupt France tears itself apart and marches over to the border of Switzerland to get back its stolen money. The Swiss army has this scenario covered, according to the military simulations. So the maneuver called for the invasion of German troops in a fictional state called Obsidia, aimed at combating insurgents active there. Also, crowd control. The exercise involved basically the fight against insurgents in urban areas. They used a Germantown specifically to make it as realistic as possible.